Hey, what's up guys? Patrick Sebastian here, performance coach for golf. And if you clicked on this, you saw the thumbnail. This is a what's in the bag video. You're probably asking, who is this guy and why do I care what's in his bag? The reason you might care is because a lot of these videos are done by pro golfers, and what pro golfers have in the bag is probably very different than what the average golfer has in the bag. And I like to think maybe I fall somewhere in between. So my golfer's profile is I'm 50 years old. I'm pretty fit because I was a martial arts coach for 20 years, and so I try to stay really fit, but I have a lot of injuries from martial arts. So my body's a little bit messed up. So 50 years old, messed up body, never been fitted before. So this is actually the first time I've ever been fitted for clubs, and that was an amazing experience. I've actually never played with new clubs before. So this is my first time playing with new clubs, and I'm about an 8 handicap right now. So like I said, decent golfer, handicap is slowly coming down, but I thought that this What's in the Bag video might actually appeal to people that are like me or trying to improve rather than what the professionals are using. Okay, so before I start this, first thing I need to do is thank Callaway. I never thought that I'd be part of Team Callaway this early on in my golfing career, but here we are. And I'm really excited to be playing these clubs this year. Huge shout out to Danny Poirier here, the rep in Montreal, Canada. Thank you so much for making this happen. I really appreciate it. So let's figure out what's in my bag. First thing I want to start with is the irons, because this was by far the biggest difference for me. I used to play with some really old forged irons that I bought used on eBay. And now I get to use modern technology, which is amazing. But when I went into my fitting, I told my fitter, yes, I want to get some help. Like if I can get a few extra yards out of the technology, for sure. But what I've never really liked is big, bulky irons. I've always played with blades or forged type irons. So I like the look of the blade or the forged iron, but I wanted a little bit of technology to help me with distance and dispersion. And so what he recommended was the Apex, which is part of the Apex Pro, Apex MB, Apex CB, but this is the Apex AI 200. So when I look at this iron from the top, at first it did feel a little bit thicker than what I was used to, but I got used to that very quickly. I like the way they look, but most importantly, it was the numbers that I was getting were amazing. I am getting probably 5 to 10 yards more per iron, depending on the iron, which means I have to readjust my distances. But for the most part, I love them. I really, really love them. And if you're on the fence about getting fitted, and as I was, honestly, for years, I didn't really believe in getting fitted. I was like, what's the big deal? So the big deal is, and this is what I figured out, especially with irons and wedges, when you buy clubs off the rack, or worse, when you buy them like me used on eBay, you have to adapt your swing to the way the clubs are set up. When you get fitted, the clubs are adapted to the way that you swing. So you can just swing, and then when you're standing over the ball, you know now that these irons are fitted to be adapted to your personal swing. And that to me is probably where the biggest difference is with a fitting. I know it's not for everyone. I know not everyone can afford it, but if you can, I cannot recommend it more. Get fitted for your irons. So I have the Apex AI 200 irons, and they go from 5 iron all the way to A wedge. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the wedges. So 5 iron all the way to A wedge. The only iron that I have that is not an Apex AI 200 is the 4 iron, which is an Apex AI 300. And the reason I was given this was like, it's kind of in between what I have already with the AI 200, but a little bit thicker, a little more pop, more like a driving iron. So something that I can kind of keep nice and low and maybe use when it's a little bit colder outside, or if I'm in windy conditions and I want to hit like a low draw or something like that. It's a little thick, and I'll be honest, I'm still getting used to it, but the numbers I got during my fitting session were amazing. So I immediately thought, okay, if I can hit a 4 iron 220, 225, and kind of play with the height a little bit if I want to, it's worth putting it in the bag. It's just going to take a little bit of work to get to a point where I'm super comfortable with it. So that's the irons. Like I said, Apex AI 200, Apex AI 300 for the 4 iron, and the shaft is, I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to shafts, but this is the Modus Tour 105 stiff flex. Okay, so Modus Tour 105 stiff flex. Honestly, I'm not an equipment expert. I'm just telling you what's on the club. So that's for the irons. Then the wedges. So this was an interesting setup for me. What my fitter recommended, he asked me, he's like, okay, normally I'd have a 52, 56, 60, which I think is pretty standard for a lot of people. And he asked me, do you ever use your 52-degree wedge around the greens? And I was like, no, not really. I usually use the 56 or the 60, depending on the situation. So he's like, okay, so why don't we give you an A wedge, which will be a 52 degree, and then we'll give you 2 of the Opus Platinum wedges. Okay, so these are the Opus Platinum wedges. 54, which I believe was bent to a 55, and then a 60 degree. The 60 degree has quite a bit of bounce, and the 54 has very little bounce. What I like about that is depending on the situation I'm in, I have 2 options, bounce or no bounce. Again, not an expert, don't exactly know how much bounce or little bounce I have. I just know that the 60 has bounce, the 54 or 55 has no bounce, and that's gonna give me different options around the greens. So that's my setup. I have an A wedge, pitching wedge, that are the AI 200 model, and then I have the 60 and 54 bent to a 55, which are the Opus Platinum model. So far, these wedges are amazing. This is my priority this season. I want to become as good as I can possibly be 100 yards and in. That's always been my weakness. So I feel like with new wedges, new clubs, now I can start focusing on those weaknesses and make them my strengths. So I've been spending tons of time on my short game, and so far these wedges are definitely making a huge difference. All right, so now we're moving up the bag into the fun stuff. So woods. So I'm going with the new Elyte woods, new from this year, the Callaway Elyte woods. And the first thing he recommended was something that I've never had before, which is a 7 wood. Now the 7 wood seems to be getting more and more popular on tour, so okay, my ego didn't take too much of a hit. But what he told me, and I think what I've actually experienced so far, he's like, hey, if you're on a par 5 or even a long par 4, you have 225, 230 left into the green, and you're in the rough, and you need to get that ball out of the rough and get it high up into the air so it lands softly, you're gonna thank me that you have this 7 wood in the bag. And so far, he was absolutely right. Even off the fairway, I can hit this thing so high. It carries as far as my old 5 wood did. My old 5 wood was actually pretty ancient, so I'm not surprised there. But so far, the 7 wood is definitely performing, and I love it. I really, really do. Then the other wood we have is a 3 wood, but it's called a 3 wood high launch, also part of the Elyte line. 3 wood high launch, and what's cool about 3 woods now is they're actually adjustable. So if you're not liking the way it's set up, you can actually adjust some of this stuff yourself. I don't play with that stuff. I trust my equipment professionals, but I was told it's like a 4 wood. They set it up more like a 4 wood, but I'm getting 240, 250 off this guy. I can use it off the tee. I'm super confident off the tee with it. Super good off the fairway. I can even play it, and if the rough isn't too thick. So far the 3 wood, amazing. And that again is part of the Elyte line. And then finally the driver, which is the Elyte standard model. 9 degrees, and yeah, I think this driver, compared to what I was playing before, what I've noticed is really the distance. I'm getting more yardage for sure. I probably added another 15 yards about compared to my old driver, but it's really the dispersion. Like I can just play this nice smooth fade that I've always played, but the ball is going further and the mistakes are getting much narrower. And obviously when you're on the tee, it's going to give you a huge amount of confidence. I feel like I'm standing over the ball and knowing that I have these new clubs, knowing I have this technology, and knowing that it was fitted to my specific needs, it just boosts my confidence like crazy. So the last thing about the woods, and this was the biggest change I think, is as I was getting fitted, especially for the driver, the fitter basically said, here, I'm just going to give you a bunch of different shafts. Don't look. Don't look at what you're using, just hit. And let's let the numbers decide what type of shaft you should use. And what we ended up with was the Vanquish 5R. So that R means regular flex. My whole life, because I could hit it a decent distance, I was always told stiff flex, stiff flex, stiff flex. He's like, look, dude, numbers don't lie. You need a regular shaft. It's clear. And you know what? I'm 50 years old. I guarantee you my swing speed isn't going to be it's not going to going up like crazy in the next few years. If anything, I want to be able to play good golf for the next 20 years. So whatever I need to do, whatever technology I need to use, if it means using a regular shaft, it means using a regular shaft. And I have that exact same shaft on all 3 woods, driver, 3 wood, and 5 wood. So 5R Vanquish shaft, so far, amazing. I haven't really noticed a difference. If anything, I feel like I don't even have to swing as hard and I'm getting more distance than I did with my old woods and my old driver. So that's pretty awesome. And then the last piece of the puzzle, and I think this was probably one of my favorite things to do. Putting has always been up and down, I think, like most of us. But luckily where I went, they had this amazing technology to get me fitted for this putter. It's called the Quintic putter fitting technology. And we had a whole line of Odyssey putters, and he just had me try all these different putters. And based on the technology, based on the fitting device, this one came out heads above everything else. So these little red and green check marks, depending on distance, depending on stroke. And this one was like all green across the board. So this is the Odyssey square to square blade. And what I love about this, it's kind of like the new trend now where the shaft goes right down the middle of the putter. So it's a little bit bent, obviously. But when I stand over the ball, what's amazing is I have to stand much closer to the ball compared to my old putters. And it just feels like I have this really pure kind of pendulum stroke on it. And though I haven't played that many rounds yet, so far my putting has felt better than it's ever felt. So that's it. That's what's in my bag. Like I said, I am not a pro golfer. I have no aspirations of being a pro golfer. I want to become the best teacher that I can be and the best coach that I can be. And I want to become the best golfer that I can be within reason. I don't have 6 hours a day to dedicate to practicing golf. I practice maybe an hour a day, but I know that having this technology is not only going to help me play better now, but it's going to help me play better in the future and for the next 20 years, I hope. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Super curious if you've been fitted for the first time before also. And again, like I said, 50 years old, tons of injuries, about an 8 handicap and on his way down, and someone who'd never been fitted and never played with new clubs before. So it was an amazing experience so far. Once again, Callaway, thank you so much for this opportunity, and talk to you soon. Peace.